Manifest destiny, yeah. Okay. It was in your history books. But how much did they really tell you? Did they tell you it wasn't about destiny? It was about theft, dressed up as prophecy. In the 1800s, politicians and preachers swore that America had a divine right to expand westward. They called it manifest destiny. But let's call it what it really was. A PR campaign for genocide and land grabs. Because under that slogan, the U.S. stole half of Mexico's territory. Texas, California, Arizona, New Mexico. None of that was destiny. It was war, treaties signed at gunpoint, and white men drawing borders that ignored everybody that already lived there. And the biggest lie is that they said it was about freedom. But what did freedom look like? For Native people, it meant slaughter, like the Trail of Tears, like Sand Creek, like Wounded Knee. For Black people, it meant slavery expanding right along with the frontier. Manifest Destiny was never about spreading democracy. It was about spreading chains. Even the gold rush, the railroads, the so-called taming of the West, all of it was Manifest Destiny in action. And every time, the profits went to the white colonizers, all while Native nations were erased. Chinese immigrants were exploited and lynched, and Black people were pushed into new systems of labor and segregation. This isn't just history either, right? That mindset that America has a God-given right to take whatever it wants, you still see it in foreign policy, in Iraq and Afghanistan, in the way U.S. corporations strip land in Africa and South America. Manifest Destiny never died. It just traded covered wagons for fighter jets and oil rigs. So no, Manifest Destiny wasn't destiny. It was a sales pitch for white supremacy. And until they stop pretending that it was some sort of noble dream, we're just going to keep living in its shadow, where conquest is called freedom and theft is called God's will.
You ever notice how every lie in American history got a holy spin on it? They'll steal your land, erase your people, and then tell you God told them to do it. That's what Manifest Destiny was. One of the biggest scams ever sold to the public. A religious remix of greed painted as divine purpose. How America Became a Lie, Episode 3, Manifest Destiny, the lie that justified theft. Now let's start in the 1840s. America was young, only about 70 years old, but already obsessed with expansion, that it was God's will for white Americans to spread west, civilize the land, and control the continent from coast to coast. They called it Manifest Destiny, but it was nothing holy about it. It was just colonization rebranded. The idea came from a journalist named John L. O'Sullivan, who wrote that it was our manifest destiny to overspread the continent allotted by Providence. Translation: we want everything and we're going to use God's name to take it. Now here's where it gets deeper. Religion wasn't just a belief, it was a tool. White settlers were told that they were chosen people bringing light to a dark land. Sound familiar? That same rhetoric was used to justify slavery, colonization, and boarding schools that ripped indigenous children away from their families. Missionaries would come preaching salvation, and then soldiers followed with guns. They baptized people with one hand and took their land with the other, and they wrote it down in history books as progress. Now, between 1830 and 1890, millions of indigenous people were displaced or killed under the banner of Manifest Destiny. The Indian Removal Act of 1830, signed by Andrew Jackson, forced entire tribes off of their land, leading to the Trail of Tears, where thousands died from disease, hunger, and exposure. But you won't see that in most history books described as genocide. They call it westward expansion. That's the power of propaganda. They turn invasion into inspiration. They said that they were spreading freedom. But freedom for who? Not for the people whose land that they stole, not for the ones they called savages. It just put on a suit and got promoted. Today they call it American exceptionalism. Same energy, same ego, just modern branding. When America invades countries for freedom or grabs land for development, that's Manifest Destiny 2.0. When history books skip over indigenous genocide but glorify pioneers, that's the lie still at work. They told generations of people that this land was empty, when the truth is it was full of thriving nations, cultures, and civilizations. So who really discovered who? Manifest Destiny wasn't about destiny, it was about domination. It was the blueprint for how America would justify every theft that came after: land, people, language, identity. And every time they said God's plan, it was really their plan to own, to control, and to erase. But here's the truth: you can't destiny what was never yours, and you can't bury the real story forever, because history has a way of resurrecting itself. This has been my unapologetic opinion. Hit that like button, share this truth, and subscribe, because next time we're talking about the next level of erasure: how indigenous and Afro-Indigenous people were reclassified, renamed, and disappeared on paper.